Hey, fourth graders, we are going to be continuing with our poetry unit. Yesterday in writing, you guys, or today, you're going to be talking about idioms. So we're going to do a poem that has quite a few idioms in it today. It's a short poem, but it's got a lot of symbolism. So it has a lot of things that you have to think about what it really is saying. Okay, so we're going to just review the idioms before we do the poem itself and we read it together. So we have idioms in the poem are eat your words. What does it mean when you eat your words? When you eat your words, it means that you're going to take something back you said, or you said it by mistake, right? So you say something like, oh, it was all that person's fault. Meanwhile, the person did it by accident. So taking it back would be eating your words, right? Because then you feel bad, right? Because it wasn't really their fault, but you blame them. So you're eating your words, right? And it's not always in a blame kind of situation. It's maybe you say the wrong thing, right? So maybe you give a statistic and your statistic was wrong, right? Which is like numbers or like a fact and your fact was wrong. So you're eating your words, right? Because you knew that you didn't say it correctly. Or the next is for better or worse. So I'm sure that you've heard this before, for better or worse. And it's meaning whether it's good or bad. So your parents are your parents, for better or worse. Whether you're well behaved or you're not behaved or whatever, for better or worse is how you use that idiom. I'm sure you guys have all heard this idiom. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. We're not talking about an apple and a tree. This is an idiom. So it's a phrase, right? We said idioms are phrases that mean something that they're actually not saying what they mean, right? So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree means children often grow up to be very much like their parents. And the next is a question that what's eating you, right? So what's eating you? It's not what's eating you, it's what's bothering you, what's making you feel uncomfortable, okay? So there are some similes and metaphors in this poem. And so we're going to read through the poem and I'm going to identify them for you, but I just want to give you a heads up. Picture of life is a metaphor, like the trees I grew. Remember, if we're using a comparison using like or as, like the trees I grew is using like, that is a simile. Whereas if there's not a like or as, then it's a metaphor. So picture of life, branches, leaves, flowers, and fruit is a metaphor. So we're going to read through this poem. And then I'm going to make it smaller, and I have those highlighters there because we're going to highlight the different parts as we reread it. Again, we read everything once, and then we reread it to read it more closely. And just so you guys know the background of this poem, Javaka Steptoe, if you see on the bottom, that's the author, had created this poem and it relates to family. So he did this project in a book and created a book about family. So in the reality, that's important to know for our background because this poem actually, even though it's called Seeds, has to do with family. Okay, so I'm going to read it once, and then again, I'm going to make it smaller, and we're going to go through it together. Seeds. You drew pictures of life with your words. And notice there's no comma or anything. You drew pictures of life with your words. It's almost like a sentence that continues on to the next line. The poetry term for that is enjambment. You don't have to know that, but understand some poems have a line and a comma, a line and then a period. Some just keep going. This line wants a little pause, but it keeps going till the end of the period where you're going to do a bigger pause, okay? You drew pictures of life with your words. I listened and ate these words you said to grow up strong. Like the trees I grew, branches, leaves, flowers, and then the fruit. I became the words I ate in you, for better or worse. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Okay, so we're going to make this smaller now. We're going to kind of go through this poem again. Let's see if I can make it a little larger for all of you. Nope, not insert. Sorry about that. We're going to go zoom 100%. That's better. So this poem is about family. So we're going to interpret this poem now that we have this second read. You drew pictures of life with your words. So you drew pictures of life with your words. That drawing pictures of life with your words is kind of idea of it's giving advice, right? So if your parents are telling you how to live, right? Your parents are constantly telling you, like, do this, don't do that, right? As a kid. And that's what parents are there for. Parents are there to guide you in the right direction. It might seem annoying sometimes, but the reality of it is that it's actually, they're trying to teach you. So by telling you what to do, they're teaching you. So you drew pictures of life with your words. So your parents have experienced life before. You haven't. So what they do is the lessons they've learned, they talk to you and they show you the way through their words. So you drew pictures of life with your words. So that's a metaphor. That pictures of life is pictures of life is a metaphor for advice with your words. I listened and ate these words you said. Well, the author, this is actually an idiom. The author actually did not eat the words, right? Eating is symbolic for took it in, right? So it's like you're a sponge and you're kind of absorbing what your parents are saying. And your parents do give you good advice, and they give you this advice so that you can learn and you could live that same way. So I listened and ate these words you said to grow up strong. So your parents' advice is to help you grow and become a better person and do the right thing. So this is an idiom, okay? So I listened and ate your word, these words you said, like the tree I grew. So he is saying that he is like the tree that grew. So all of the advice that his parents were giving him helped him grow and become a stronger person. Does that make sense? So the like a tree is there, his growing is like a tree. Trees grow big and strong, right? So like the tree is a simile. This like the tree is a simile. Like the tree I grow. So imagine growing big and the tree is very strong and it's growing high and it's growing tall. He's comparing himself to growing like a tree, strong and towards the sky. Branches, leaves, flowers, and then the fruit. So, what does that mean? That is a metaphor. Okay, so I'm using pink for simile and metaphor because they're both comparisons. Remember, simile is using like or as. So, this one is a simile, this one's a metaphor. So, what would branches, leaves, flowers, and then fruit? Well, if he's growing and he's growing strong and he's growing tall, to be a complete tree, you need branches and leaves and flowers and then fruit. That's what makes you a tree, are all those parts. Your parents' advice, right? This picture of life, this parents' advice made this person grow into a tree strong and complete. I don't know if you've ever heard well-rounded. It means you're good at a lot of things and you could do a lot of things. Branches, leaves, flowers, and then fruit is everything that a tree needs to be alive and to be safe and be a tree. So they're using the metaphor of branches, leaves, flowers, and then fruit for the person to be a complete person, so that they're a good person and they're a strong person and they do the right thing and they know how to take care of themselves. All these different components of life are being compared to the branches, the trees, the leaves, the branches, the leaves, the flowers, and then the fruit. I became the words and I ate in you. I became the words that I ate in you. Well, I ate in you. The words I ate in you. So it's saying I became that advice. I learned from you, right? I ate those words that you said. I took them in and I became that. I became part of who you are. I became your lessons that you have taught me as a parent. For better or worse, again, another idiom, what it means in good or in bad. And for the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, another idiom. So for better, for worse, we basically said, you know what? My parents, they don't know it all. They don't know it all. And sometimes they're learning from their mistakes too. So sometimes your parents' advice is good for you. Sometimes as you get older, maybe you would do something different. And so for good or for bad, either way, whether it was good advice or not, I became that just like you because I learned from you. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree is basically saying, I am like you. So this it's about seeds and a metaphor of seeds and a tree growing, but it's actually the idea of a child growing into an adult and a child growing into an adult from their parents' advice, right? So a parent's advice and lessons have helped that child become a complete adult person. Okay. So this is the poem we're doing today. And your assignment today is, and I'm going to open it up for you. I'm just going to go with my Google Drive. So you guys are going to see me bopping around here. Is this quiz. I'm going to open it up. And you guys are going to be doing this, completing this quiz today. It says match the idiom in the left to its meaning. Mighty oaks from tiny acorns. It's actually, you're just going to click which one you think it is. And I'll change the wording on that. So actually it makes sense. But you have the poem here if you need to reread it. And you also have the YouTube video if you want to look at it again. But it says, in the poem, the speaker is probably talking to, well, who is it talking to? A dog, a tree, a parent, or an apple? Which of these is mentioned first in the poem? You could go back and look at that. You don't need to. This saying the apple doesn't fall far from the tree means the poem is not about. So remember what I told you it was about. In this poem, what does the speaker use to draw pictures? In which way are the speaker and the parents the same? Remember that a simile compares two things using the words like or as. Write a simile from seeds below. So you're not going to write a simile about seeds. You're going to find one of the similes using like that we had in this poem, right? I went over it in our video. Remember that a metaphor compares two things without using the words like or as. Write a metaphor from the poem. And then these are going to be multiple choice questions. And the last says, what do you think the message the author is trying to give for advice? So this is your writing, your reading work for today. Now remember that your writing work also has to do with idioms. Okay, so you're going to be writing idioms today if you haven't done that yet in your writing. Okay, guys, well, have a good night and I will see you tomorrow.